Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've got a really cool topic to explore with you today. It's all about how you can get more done, but not by working harder or longer, but smarter.
Yeah, you guys have sent us some fascinating stuff recently, and this one really stood out. We're digging into this idea of a 15-minute productivity hack.
Sounds intriguing, right? It comes from a podcast script we were looking at. It was called SmartPodcast, episode 27, and it featured a host, Patrick, chatting with a productivity expert named Harry.
Right, and what caught our eye, and hopefully yours too as we unpack this, is the idea that working in short, super focused bursts can actually be way more effective than trying to power through for hours on end.
Absolutely. So today we're going to really dissect this Smart Podcast script, pull out the most useful bits, and see how we can all actually use this 15-minute approach to be more productive in our own lives.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. The first question that pops to mind, and it's something that Patrick and Harry discuss right off the bat, is why 15 minutes? Why that specific time frame? What's the thinking behind it?
Well, Harry, the productivity expert in the script, kind of challenges that traditional idea that you need to put in tons of hours to get things done.
Makes sense. We hear that all the time, right? Put in the hours, hustle, grind. But is that always the most effective way?
Exactly. And Harry actually points to research that shows that these short, intense bursts of focused work can be just as, if not more effective than those long, drawn-out slogs.
Interesting. So it's not just about the time, it's about the focus during that time. It's that intensity that really matters. Did they elaborate on that more? What else do Patrick and Harry say about why that shorter duration is so beneficial?
Yeah, they hit on a couple of key points. For one thing, they talk about how much easier it is to actually commit to a 15-minute work session. It feels way less daunting than blocking out, say, 2 hours on your calendar.
Right, I get that. There's less of that initial resistance, that feeling of, I don't want to start this huge task. It's like that mental hurdle is much lower.
Totally. It's a lot easier to convince yourself to focus for just 15 minutes. And then, and this is really interesting, Harry talks about this idea of building momentum. He explains that often, once you get started and that 15 minutes is up, you find yourself in a flow and you just want to keep going.
I've definitely experienced that. It's like that initial push to start is the hardest part. Once you're in it, you kind of get carried away.
Precisely. So this 15-minute burst can act like a little jump start for a longer, more productive session.
It's a cool little trip to kind of outsmart your own brain, right? Make that first step so small you barely notice it, and then whoosh, you're off. Okay, so let's dive into the nitty-gritty. How does this 15-minute rule actually work? What's the process?
Harry lays it out pretty simply. You set a timer for 15 minutes, and for that entire time, you focus on just one single task. And I mean absolutely zero distractions.
No checking your phone every 2 minutes?
Nope, none of that. No emails, no social media, no multitasking. Just pure, undiluted focus on that one thing.
Sounds tough, but also kind of refreshing. So what kind of benefits do Patrick and Harry say you can expect if you actually manage to pull this off?
They highlight a bunch of advantages. First off, as we've touched on, it's amazing for tackling procrastination. That short time commitment makes it way less intimidating to actually get started on something you've been putting off.
I can see that. It's like dipping your toes in the water instead of diving headfirst. Less scary.
Exactly. And then there's that momentum factor we talked about. That initial 15 minutes often helps you break through that inertia, and then you just keep rolling. And they also point out that working in these short bursts can actually help prevent burnout.
Burnout, yeah. We all struggle with that, right? Pushing yourself too hard for too long can backfire.
Definitely. But breaking your work into these manageable chunks makes it more sustainable in the long run. Now, Patrick brings up a good point in the episode, though. What about those tasks that obviously take more than 15 minutes to complete?
Right. That's a valid concern. Not everything fits neatly into a 15-minute box.
True. But Harry's response to that is really insightful. He says that the goal of a 15-minute session isn't always to finish something entirely. Sometimes it's just about making progress, and you'd be surprised how much you can actually get done in 15 minutes of pure focus.
It's about chipping away at it bit by bit.
Yeah, exactly. And he goes on to emphasize the power of consistency. Even if you don't finish the whole task in one go, those regular bursts of progress add up over time.
Okay, so we've got the theory down, but what about practical application? How do they suggest actually putting this 15-minute rule into practice?
They give some really helpful examples, one they call the 15-minute morning plan. Basically, you dedicate just 15 minutes every morning to figuring out your top 3 priorities for the day.
So you start your day with intention and focus. Nice. Any other tips?
Yeah, they also talk about something called power sprints. These are basically timed 15-minute intervals for focused work on specific tasks.
Yeah.
They give examples like responding to emails, brainstorming, writing, that kind of thing.
So you're applying that 15-minute focus to whatever task you're tackling at that moment. Interesting.
Exactly. And they have a fun one called the cleanup trick. It's pretty straightforward. You spend 15 minutes just decluttering your workspace.
Love that one. A tidy space, a tidy mind, right?
Right. And they even suggest that getting rid of that clutter can actually boost your productivity because there are fewer distractions. And they also talk about using these 15-minute blocks for learning and personal growth. You could spend that time reading, listening to something informative, or even practicing a new skill.
Ooh, I like that. So it's not just about work tasks, it's about personal development too. Did they share any personal experiences using this method?
Actually, yeah. Patrick talks about how he uses 15-minute sprints to power through his email so he doesn't get sucked into his inbox for hours.
That's smart. We've all been there, right? The email black hole. Okay, so this all sounds great, but are there any potential pitfalls to be aware of? Any common mistakes people make when they try to implement this?
Definitely. Harry points out a few things to watch out for. First off, he stresses that multitasking is a big no-no. The whole point of this is to laser focus on one thing at a time. Trying to juggle multiple tasks defeats the purpose entirely.
Makes sense. Focus is key here. What else do they warn against?
Another trap is overcomplicating things. The beauty of this method is its simplicity. Don't get bogged down in complex planning or tracking systems. Just set a timer and go.
Keep it simple. Got it. What's the third pitfall?
The last one is inconsistency. The real benefits come from applying this consistently over time. Doing a 15-minute sprint here and there won't make much of a difference. It's the habit that creates lasting change.
So it's about making it a regular part of your routine, not just a one-time experiment.
Exactly. So to sum up, what we're taking away from this deep dive into the Smart Podcast is that this 15-minute productivity hack is a really simple but powerful strategy to work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
It's all about harnessing those short bursts of focused energy to get things done.
And as Harry so eloquently puts it, when you're feeling overwhelmed or stuck, sometimes the best thing you can do is just start with 15 minutes.
Love that. It's such a manageable starting point. So here's a little challenge for you, our listeners. Pick one task today, anything you've been putting off or something you want to make some progress on, and give this 15-minute rule a try. Set a timer, eliminate all distractions, and focus solely on that one task for 15 minutes. See what happens.
And as you experiment with this, think about how consistently applying this, even just for short periods, could shift your perspective on what you can achieve in a day or even a week. How might these small intervals of focused work contribute to your bigger goals in the long run?
We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so feel free to share them with us. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time.
See you then.